We are here. What's up, everybody? We're getting started just a second. It is I. You know who I am. I'm your best buddy, Basil. And in fact, I'm not on camera today. I apologize. It's not done, but I promise you, things are in the works. Because I cannot go any longer like this. Any longer without my horrible VR headset and big googly eyes. It's just part of the brand. What am I supposed to do? But thanks everybody for being cool about it, and a big old shout out to everybody who's on the Canary Cry text message alert system. If you are not, get on it now. Text the word Canary to 877-740-3226 and you'll never miss a show. We'll just send you a little text message before any of our live broadcasts, including Gons. Gons is doing his thing, man. So you're going to want to do that. And the fun part is you can text us back at that number. We can't carry on a long conversation with you because it's very expensive. But keep an ear out for your area code like 979. Woo, God bless you, buddy. Shout out 979. Thank you very much. Who's this? 856 says, Godspeed, brother. I pray the doctor visit yesterday went well. Hopefully I can stop in today. I hope you can. Thank you, 856. 254 says, it seems I've come to the end of my wits. My life has devolved into a series of fits. I looked left and right for a reason why, so my doctor prescribed more Canary Cry. Thank you, 254. Witty as always. So, we're just going to jump right in. We're going to get the show started here in a second. Remember, this is a call-in show, which means you must call in. Somebody's got to call in. You got to do it. That's what the show is. We're just going to go ahead and get the show started immediately. No use in waiting. Let's do this. So you know how this works. I'm going to stop feeding the ducks the best, most powerful, soul-hitting stock music that you're listening to now that comes free with the streaming software. Then I'm going to play a little jingle, and we are in business. So prepare yourself. Here I go. Oh, let me put up this little thing here. Boop. And away we go.
Called it. We got a caller. We got a caller on the line here.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Canary Cry Clubhouse. I am your best buddy, Basil, and I'm glad you're here because I'm here too. And a big shout out to everybody tuning in live on the Canary Cry News Talk channel, and especially the Face Like the Sun channel. What's going on, Face Like the Sun people? We got Annie in the chat. We got Psalm 40 in the chat. We got Andy. We got Obey. We got everybody important in the whole world is here hanging out live. This is an opportunity for us to connect as a community without getting just talk about some other stuff, okay? We don't need to always be reading headlines. We don't need to always be concerning ourselves with the worries of this world and the deception of the news establishment. Doesn't even matter anymore. Doesn't even matter. We know Tulsi Gabbard told us Operation Mockingbird is in play. And we know that Operation Mockingbird, the CIA operation during the Cold War that was slammed by the Church Committee after the JFK assassination, CIA was out of control. And why? Because they had put their own assets on the news, in the news media, controlling the narrative of the world. Very similar to that 60 Minutes interview with the Mossad guy who says, basically, all the world's a stage. We write the script. We produce the production. We star in the play. Where do you think they learned that? Where do you think they got that from? It's from our guys. Say what you will about the CIA, but they are the ones who created the techniques and the masterpiece that is the modern propaganda machine. Any other intelligence agency, they got it from us, okay? Us as in the United States, not us as in I'm the CIA. Although, how would you know? How would anybody know? Because we do know, as we watched over the past few years, where the mainstream media Mockingbird agents were getting fired or leaving as the trust in the mainstream media started to dissolve right in front of our eyes. What happened? Well, all those CNN anchors, all those MSNBC crazy people, they did not disappear. They went into the quote unquote alternative media. So as we know, we all take for granted that alt media is the tool with which we fight back on the mainstream establishment. But no more. No more. We went through this last Canary, or I guess Monday's show, talking about Tucker Carlson, who is just absolutely befuddled to hear that his dad was involved with the CIA, even though he had told us as much for many years now. You got Candace Owens. I don't know much about Candace Owens, but I do know that she is being sued by the president of France for talking about Macron's wife. Or perhaps husband. I don't know. I don't know anything about it, but a lot of things going on in the alt media. So this is our opportunity to take a seat, come together, fellowship, talk about life, God, the universe, the Bible, everything else, and get our act together here, because next week is another week. Next week is another week with more news to come. Apologies for those just tuning in. I am not on camera yet. Operation Fix Basil's Googly Eye system is deep underway. I'm hoping and praying that by Monday I'll be back on camera, but I appreciate your patience and for tuning in anyways, even though you don't see some big googly eyes bouncing around, just coming in, hanging out, listening to the audio, chatting with the friends and the fellowship. Okay, well, remember, this is a call-in show. You're going to need to call in. That's what the deal is. We call in, we talk, we chat. We talk about what's most important going on in the world. Usually in Canary Cry Clubhouse, we will be premiering Gonza's Face Like the Sun mini documentary Beyond the Verse, which has been a weekly mini documentary put out by Gonz. We premiere it here and then we talk about it. We let it set the tone for our weekend. But unfortunately, we do not have a Beyond the Verse today. That has been postponed. But don't worry, next week we'll be back to Beyond the Versing. I don't know what Gonza's schedule for that is, so keep an eye out. Perhaps we'll just save it for next week. But I thought it was a good opportunity to talk about many things. Really, anythings and many things. But, of course, as always, trusting the Holy Spirit to guide the conversation, to inspire the callers, and to take this time to make it useful and edifying for the body. One big thing that's going on is that it is August. It is indeed August. We're now 7 days, 1 week into August. And that means that the 2025 Canary Cry Burning Man Research Project, in conjunction with Carl Teichrieb and the Camp of the Unknown God, is coming. It's coming at the end of the month. So prepare yourselves for that. There will be probably a couple of episodes where I am gone the week of the 24th. Oh my gosh, the 24th. That's less than 3 weeks away. Ay, ay, ay. 2.5 weeks from now, Burning Man will be beginning. And for those who have been with us for a long time, I apologize. I'm going to have to explain it because there's a lot of new people either finding the show now or they are finding their way back to the show. And I will say, I suppose 2021, we had done a couple Burning Man research projects before 2021. 2021 was when the Face Like the Sun channel got banned and we lost contact with so many wonderful people. And I'll take the time to kind of walk through this just a little bit because Burning Man, as we know, divisive topic, which it should not be divisive. I think there's a very powerful psychological operation that makes Burning Man so divisive, because it should not be divisive. The body should not be dividing over Burning Man, because we are of one mind, the mind of Christ. Nobody here is trying to say that Burning Man is a holy place where Christians should go and enjoy the presence of other virtue seeking, not virtue signaling, virtue seeking, and members of the body who are turning away from sin. And like the Christian desert fathers from early Christianity, going out into the desert to find the solitude, to leave the distractions of modern society, to only seek the voice of God. Nobody's saying that. We know what Burning Man is. You may be thinking, oh, stinky hippies in the desert. Oh, sin fest. Oh, these types of things. And you will be right. You are right, if that's the first thing that comes to your mind. However, the psychological operation comes in when we then dismiss everything that goes on out there. Dismiss it as unimportant. Dismiss it as a side quest for heathens. And for those of you, of course, who've been around for a while, you know, because we learned ourselves back in 2014 with Carl Teichgrib, author of The Game of Gods and researcher, academic professional in the topic of transformational events, global theology, and amazing worldview trend tracker, who let us in on, again, years and years of his work, and explained to us that Burning Man is not just a music festival. Burning Man themselves, they would tell you they're not a music festival, but a temporary city that goes up. But in this context, remember, Burning Man is a global phenomenon. People come from all over the world, depending on the year. Up to 80,000 people travel from all corners of the globe to go camp in the middle of a desert for somewhere between 7 and 10 days. And what we found over the years is that Burning Man is not to be dismissed as something to be ignored. But what we found every year, I think it was 2018, we actually began our boots on the ground research. And we here at Canary Cry, Carl Teichgrib has been going for much longer. And he told us we didn't know what to expect. I mean, we should have known. He told us exactly what it was. And that is ground zero for the petri dish, which grows and evolves the global ideologies of tomorrow. What a lot of people don't know is that Burning Man is not just and, not taking a shower for 7 days. It's not just a big party, although there is lots of partying going on. But it is an intellectual hub. Most of what goes on at Burning Man are things like lectures and workshops, where famous intellectuals and scholars, engineers, scientists from around the world, they come together to present their most cutting-edge work on any number of topics. And as ground zero, the ideologies that are being presented in those lectures, workshops, and otherwise, then go out into the world. They spread throughout the globe to seed these ideologies, which we inevitably see pop up very soon after. Pretty much every year, we identify in the categories that we pay attention to, whether it's military-industrial complex, psychedelics, spirituality, world religions, things like this. identifying the next steps for the globalized narrative crafting. And inevitably, sometimes it's months, but sometimes it's next year, we start to see those ideas, those concepts, those breakthroughs, those ideologies start to take hold. The infection spreads around the world. We've attended lectures and workshops and things from individuals at Burning Man who the very next month appear at places like Davos, giving those lectures, introducing the world's elites to the ideas, concepts, narratives that were just presented at Burning Man. And then we see that integrated into the miasma of social engineering, narrative control, and oftentimes even religious institutions. It's also, Burning Man, also, of course, a ritual or a collection of rituals, or almost like in a biblical sense, the sort of feast days where these celebrations, it wasn't just a day or a party, but it was a week. It was 10 days. It was this extended period where work stops and the ceremony went on for many days or weeks. And indeed, within the time span of Burning Man, we have documented, and I've tried to not only bring the academic recitation of what we see happening out there, but also boots on the ground audio adventures. And many of you have heard these, but if you haven't, what you need to do, and maybe go poke around right now, or you can do it after the show, but you're going to want to go to burningmanresearch.com. Yes, unbelievable that burningmanresearch.com was a URL we were able to get our hands on. And you can see and listen to over 10 years now, all the way back to 2014, of the content, the podcasts, the flybys, the audio journeys that have made the Canary Cry populace the number one most educated on Earth about what is going on at Burning Man. So please go check those out. I see right at this exact second the Burning Man episodes from last year have not gone up. I'm going to make a note of that. We'll make sure to get the most recent Burning Man episodes on that page to complete the collection. Psalm 1 in the chat says, what about the flooding rain that made it all mud? Yeah, what about it? You should go listen to our episodes. I was there during the flood, the great mud flood of Burning Man. I think that was 2 years ago, 2023. Yes, actually, you can see it here. Start here with our most recent mega episode on the Burning Man 2023 Mudpocalypse. In addition, what we have found, we have documented, is that Burning Man is also a petri dish for more technological or military industrial complex or intelligence technology or systems. Not just technology as in devices, but methods, social engineering methods. Mudpocalypse was a great example of this, where we saw all of Burning Man go into a lockdown, which was bizarre because, of course, 2023, we're coming out of COVID lockdowns. Everybody was happy to be free, enjoying their time. And then, boom, a little bit of rain. The whole city, Black Rock City, gets put into another version of lockdown where law enforcement was present. You can listen to me describe what was going on as sirens and parades of law enforcement were whipping down the streets of Black Rock City. And what came of that? So go check out burningmanresearch.com if you want to learn more. Do it after this. I will make sure that the most recent episodes are available up there. And of course, make sure to listen to all the interviews, because this is not just a thing where Basil goes off into the desert with a microphone and a prayer. Although microphones, and especially prayers, are required for the success of these research projects. But of course, it wouldn't be possible, and it wouldn't even have come to mind if it weren't for Carl Teichgrib, our wonderful Canadian friend, author of Game of Gods and other wonderful things, researching this sort of thing on a regular basis. This is what he does. He has a wealth of information, a wealth of knowledge, and like any real good researcher, has the boots on the ground, field experience with what's going on. Absolutely, we'll be talking to him very shortly. I should probably give that guy a call soon. But it is not just I, but an entire team of Bible-believing, loving, evangelistically minded, sober-minded, and brave believers who go out there, establish a camp. And that camp is called the Camp of the Unknown God. Oh, goodness gracious. I just remembered we have a what's it called? A jingle. We have a jingle for the Camp of the Unknown God. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Unknown. Unknown. Yeah. Yeah, let's see here. Can Basil find it? Can he find it? Hold on. Probably not. Probably not. He's going to do it. I'm in the spreadsheet. We now have, how many do we have? About 1,000. We have a spreadsheet with about 1,000 pieces of art that have been sent in from beautiful Canarians around the world. And searching that sheet is not always the easiest thing to do. Camp of the Unknown God. What is the acronym? COTUG? That couldn't possibly be it. All right. Well, I'll keep finding that secretly as... Oh, do I have it? Nope. That's PDF. All right. Anywho, Camp of the Unknown God. A group of wonderful people. I have interviewed so many of them. Some have come, some have gone. Some repeat themselves and show up every year for the research project. Some of them we've gotten to know quite well. George Olson, actually, one fellow, very interesting fellow, who works in, I guess, what exactly was his title? I don't remember. But he's a trend analyst for in the field of intelligence and safety. That could mean he's CIA. I don't know if he's, I don't think he possibly could. He would be a good in. That would be a good way for them to get in. But he's a wonderful guy. We did an interview with him last episode. He actually just reached out, checking to see if we're going to be going. So hopefully we get to talk to him again. Some very deep insight on what exactly is going on out there at the Burning Man. So this is not only through the ritualistic, ceremonial, spiritual warfare realm, an impactful event. I mean, perhaps the most largely attended, most broadly attended, and maybe even most importantly attended ceremonial event on the global stage, which certainly plays a role in the spiritual battles and indeed the spiritual war that goes on around the world. But it is also an experimentation platform for military-industrial complex, not just technology, but intelligence programs, social engineering, and widely guiding the global conversation. Indeed, I am even more excited in the realm of research. Intellectually, I am most excited this year to see how this, I would say global, but especially, national in the United States, this turn that we've seen, this cultural turn towards conservatism, this cultural turn towards traditionalism, this spiritual turn towards people finding their way back or finding their way to Christianity for the first time. And even this appeared in our research years ago, where at Burning Man there are many Christian organizations. And by Christian organizations, I mean that in the broadest possible term. We can call them religious organizations who show up, integrate with the Burning Man culture, try their best to bring some sort of influence of, I'll say, broadly religious influence into the Burning Man conversation. And we saw even then, over the past few years, that these camps, these religious camps, were gaining more and more influence, more and more affluence, more and more interest over the past few years, which indicated to myself and the rest of the researchers that there was a subtle turning going on. Now, this, of course, does not mean, as we're seeing in the cultural shift towards traditionalism, conservatism, and Christianity, as well as other established sort of religious traditions, this does not mean that everybody is turning towards an authentic salvific experience and that American evangelicals will necessarily find themselves at home in places that they don't feel at home perhaps now or in the past. It's more complicated than that, we've seen. But I'm very interested to see what next steps reveal themselves. Indeed, we were some of the first people, first researchers, first podcasters years ago to identify the realm of psychedelics, pharmakia, making its way into normalization within the church. Carl Teichrib identified this even at I always forget what it's called, but it's something like the World Conference, the International Conference on World Religions, or the UN Meeting of World Religions. And what do we see? Not only psychedelics, pharmakia becoming, in sort of a therapeutic sense, making its way into civilized society, but also psychedelics known by their alternative name, entheogens, meaning God within. Psychedelics becoming a more accepted experience for churchgoers. Again, these are all things predicted, known far in advance by Canary Cry listeners because of this Burning Man research. You might take for granted now these obvious things that we see in the media. I mean, talk about robotics. And I will say the first year that we went, I have the book right in front of me. Sorry, I'm not on camera. The very first year that we went to Burning Man for the research was 2018. And I have here the 2018 Burning Man book that comes with your tickets. And it has the theme of the year. Because remember, every year has its own giant theme. 2018, the one we went to was called I, Robot. It was about, of course, robots integrating not man with machine in a sort of cyborg sense, because, of course, that theme was 2 years later, but integrating robots into culture, the personhood of robots. I'm going to look up real quick. List of Burning Man themes by year. Because this year's theme, Waking Dream, was 2022. Tomorrow Today, that is this year. Let me see if I can pull this up here. Let me go like this. Tomorrow, I'm going to do it over in this window so you can see it. Tomorrow Today, Burning Man. Because this always sets the stage. Again, remember, keep it in mind, ceremonially, ritualistically, culturally, these Burning Man themes have been incredibly revealing when it comes to the steering of the cultural conversation. Burning Man 2025. This is coming from burningman.org, journal.burningman.org. Burning Man 2025. Tomorrow Today. Sorry, I'm looking at some private chat here. We got some people in here. Okay, sorry about that. Tomorrow Today. Here's a quote from Angela Davis. I am no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I am changing the things I cannot accept. The 2025 Burning Man theme is an invitation to imagine the future in new ways and to make it real through our collective actions. In the exuberant spirit of the prior century's world fairs, that's very interesting. The world fairs always have been rife with interest for skeptics and narrative suspicious people, and you might even call them conspiracy theories. And interestingly enough, Trump himself is talking about putting on the World Fair again. And these World Fairs, I would say, in fact, I believe Carl, he has either told me this, or he will tell me this, or Carl Teichgrub will agree with me. Before Burning Man, the closest thing to a sort of global, ritualistic, ceremonial, transformative event, the closest thing before Burning Man was the World Fairs. And we know the World Fairs, they are just riddled. In fact, maybe I'll do next episode about the World Fairs, because they are riddled with secret histories, turning points in technology, in systems. Much of the social engineering that goes into carrying out a World Fair and what gets carried out afterwards is the same stuff we see at Burning Man now. So this is very fitting that the Burning Man theme this year is reflecting its sort of spiritual ancestry of the World Fairs. In the exuberant spirit of the prior century's World Fairs, which celebrated not only scientific progress, but also cultural change and artistic excellence, the 2025 edition of Black Rock City will showcase Burning Man's global culture of art and innovation. It will provide a venue for us to dream, invent, prototype, and share our best and brightest ideas for the years ahead. If we think of the future as a story we tell ourselves, two plot lines have seemingly come to dominate the popular imagination. This is starting to sound like a Canary Cry episode. On the one hand, a happy modernist fable of tech-fueled utopia. That's the technocracy we keep hearing about. And on the other, a postmodern myth of dystopian collapse. It's increasingly difficult to believe in the first because we now know it's built on an unsustainable foundation. And we don't even want to think about the second because it's a tragedy where no one gets out alive. unless you believe in Jesus and God's got your back. Yet, for all its uncertainty, the future still feels real to us. It's a time and place where we're going to live, sooner or later. What's it going to be like for you, for us, for all of us? If you could talk to your future self, what would you say? And what would you want to hear? What kind of ancestor are you going to be? Beautiful. That's perfect. What kind of ancestor are you going to be? You know, of course, at Burning Man, that is its own sort of melting pot of ideologies and religions of various kinds. Of course, a lot of pagan, neo-pagan representation there, and ancestor worship in many camps is a pretty important part in many of the rituals, things like this. The last year, well, actually, it's become kind of a regular part now that there is some sort of giant installation, usually something, a temple that is burned, not the temple, but some sort of art installation, whether it be the temple, whether it be the man that gets burnt, or I believe it was last year, 2 years ago, was the Tower of Babel, which had all sorts of crazy things plastered on it, but included sort of ancestor worship of the man who started Burning Man. This guy, he always pops up. There are always sort of shrines or a sort of temple or effigy or something of this fella. So ancestor worship is a pretty normalized part of what goes on there on the broader scale. Back to the theme here. Burning Man is a lot more than one event these days, and the global culture is strong and healthy, and yet as we expand our presence out into the world and daily life, let me read that again, and yet as we expand our presence out into the world and daily life, we no longer have the luxury of thinking we are somehow apart from that world. It's almost as if we're reading a quote straight from a Carl Teichert book or something. This has been his message for quite some time, specifically about Burning Man. The world's problems are ours and vice versa. We may not be able to fix everything that's broken, but we just might be able to build something better. Let's take back the future. Oh, we got build back better right there in the theme. That's great. We're going to build something better. It goes on for quite some time here. I think you can see that. Let me read this. Here's another quote from David Suzuki. The future doesn't exist. The only thing that exists is now and our memory of what happened in the past because we invented the idea of a future. We are the only animal that realized we can affect the future by what we do today. Let me give you one or two more paragraphs here. Most lives are lived in a sort of endless present, or more accurately, a fractional second in the past, thanks to processing lag. That is so interesting. I was just thinking about this yesterday, where we like to think, be in the now, you know, live now, this sort of thing, very popular in self-help or spirituality or something like this. But because we actually don't experience now, we never do experience now, because there's a slight lag between what are we experiencing with? We're experiencing with our brain. Well, the timing between something happening in the world and our brain processing and perceiving it, there is a very slight lag there. And so whatever we're experiencing, not only is it not now, but it's actually in the past. We're experiencing the past before we experience now, which may seem obvious and may seem like a silly thing to say. But it is a very interesting, if you think about it sort of spiritually, philosophically. We're always striving. I mean, I'll say this. Lots of advice that you'd be given from psychologists, from spiritual people, New Agers, I forget the fella's name, but very famous guru guy, you know, be here now. Was that Terrence McKenna? You know, now is so important. Now, don't think about the future. Don't think about the past. All you have is now. Be now. But we never experience now. We're always experiencing the past. That's all we have, which is a real mind-bending way to think, especially if you're interested in things like time travel and such. It continues here. But somewhere back in the Pleistocene, some of the cleverer apes developed the ability to conceptualize time and create mental models of things that did not really exist. Okay, we're getting into some stoned ape theory here. Let's go. The future was one of those things. It was useful, but not terribly so, because for a very long time, things didn't really change much for most people. Then, a few hundred years ago, the pace of change suddenly sped up from zero to dizzying. Electric lights, indoor plumbing, espresso machines. Before long, the slow march of progress had turned into an all-out sprint we know today, and the idea of the future was back in business. The first of what would come to be called World's Fairs was England's Great Exposition of 1851, which showcased bleeding-edge tech like early fax machine. What? An early fax machine in 1851. By the 20th century, this tech-forward depiction of the future had become part of the mythos of Western culture. Complemented, that is a really good point. If you think about the West's not only mythology, but almost religion, if we're talking about sort of cultural, cohesive philosophy, when it comes to the West, the future is God in a way. Think of the Enlightenment, you think of science, you think of even politics, progressivism. They've sort of made a deity of the future. And we've seen so many times in the 20th, 21st century, horrible things be done in the name of the future. Human sacrifices on scales that we have never seen before being done in the name of a better future. If future is a god, it is a bloodthirsty one. By the 20th century, this tech-forward depiction of the future had become part of the mythos of Western culture, complemented by the starry-eyed prose of, quote, golden age science fiction. Again, that's the second time that this Burning Man theme has reflected a sort of Trumpian, something from the Trumpian brand. I think this is interesting. I mentioned just a bit ago, I'm very interested to see a reflection or a response of the Burning Man culture to the turn towards conservatism. And we now have here, I mean, this entire thing, Tomorrow Today, is a conservative idea. This whole talk about the past, going back, they are re-mythologizing the World's Fairs. I mean, this is very conservative look at what they're doing. The very conservative I guess, ethos we're getting here. And again, this evocation of the Golden Age. Complemented by the starry-eyed prose of Golden Age science fiction and made manifest in popular culture through movies, TV shows, and theme parks. And of course, advertising. What? Don't you get me started, baby, but they're talking about advertising as one of these Golden Age cultural myths of the West. And of course, advertising. The World's Fairs and Expos were coming out parties for debutante products, which sooner or later everyone was going to want to buy. Much like how Burning Man has been a coming out party for debutante ideologies and movements, cultural movements. Looking back, the modernist myth of the future seems to have been first and foremost a marketing story. What? I'm telling you, folks, I don't know how this happens, but if there is a simulation, it's plugged right into this podcast. I'm not even going to go off the rabbit trail that about 80% of you know that I was about to go down. An alluring story with sexy robots and flying cars, but nonetheless built on an untenable foundation of endless growth and boundless resources. Wow. There's almost too much of this to do the whole thing, but they do mention dystopia. Let me just get this real quick. The term dystopia has been around for centuries, coined originally as a snarky counterpart to the dreamy utopia of Thomas More. But from a cultural point of view, it wasn't really much of a thing until George Orwell published his 1984, A Dark Tale of Perpetual War and Pervasive Surveillance. And so was born the prevailing postmodern myth of the future, now typified by planetary ruin, societal collapse, and AI murder bots. Great. It's important to appreciate the cultural weight of these two mythic structures, the modernist story of eternal progress and the postmodern story of irreversible destruction. For all its evolutionary advantages, foresight has its shortcomings. Like all mental models, it is by definition incomplete, and lazy human computers that we are, we populate it with memes we've absorbed from popular culture, like the AI that famously concluded the meaning of life is cat videos. We have been exposed to enough dystopian thinking that at some level we may start to believe the zombies are real. Oh, the zombies are real, my friends. Somewhere between the extremes of a perfect but impossible utopia and a terrifying dystopia that nobody wants is a third possible path for the future. Protopia. Whoa, we're coining terms, folks. Seriously, pay attention to this. If this is the explanation of the Burning Man theme, Protopia, we are going to be hearing a lot more about Protopia. Expect this word, Protopia, to start popping up in culture all around you, in politics, in entertainment, everything, perhaps even at your church. And y'all are some of the first people to hear it. Isn't that fun? Protopia. Writer and futurist and longtime Burning Man participant Kevin Kelly coined the term to describe a future based on steady progress. Better than today, but not perfect and not without setbacks, predicated not on avarice or despair, but on slowly, gradually working to make a world better for everyone, one step at a time. In other words, a lot like iterative approach that we encourage and embrace in the Burning Man world. Protopia. Burning Man is emphatically not a utopian society, nor was it ever meant to be. But it is an influential cultural movement and social experiment with some unique opportunities to prototype new solutions. They're just coming out and saying it now. They're just straight up coming out and saying exactly what we've been telling you for years, is that it's a place to experiment and prototype cultural tools. Social engineering, narratives, ideologies, being prototyped, especially at the Mudpocalypse 2023's episode. Go listen to it. We saw a system of safety and surveillance take place during the Mudpocalypse of 2023 that was eerily familiar. As we cross the halfway mark in our 10-year sustainability roadmap, this is a natural point to consider how we can achieve a more harmonious relationship between ourselves, the environment, the resources required to burn, in the spirit of protopianism. Protopianism. We are prototyping ways for humanity to survive and thrive in the face of mounting climate crisis over decades to come. Our strength lies in our ethos, in the power of communal effort, in our commitment to leaving a positive trace, and most of all, in the principle of participation to, quote, make the world real through actions that open the heart. Aww. This year's Black Rock City event will seek to rekindle the hopeful spirit of the World's Fair, fueled in this case not by consumerism, but by a shared interest in learning from each other and advancing our collective progress toward a better future. Artists, Camp organizers and cultural contributors of all varieties are encouraged to bring their visions for a protopian future. And since so many of the challenges we face are global, we invite the international Burning Man community to join us in this effort, whether in Black Rock City or their local actions around the world. It's easy to be disheartened these days. Our event, our society, and the planet itself are facing unprecedented challenges, but we are a can-do crowd, a resourceful bunch with a strong bias to action. So when you imagine the future, what is your place in it? How are you going to show up, as a hero or a victim? Whatever future we imagine, it's not something that's going to happen to us. It's something we're going to go out and make happen. So there you go, folks. That's setting the stage. Setting the stage for this year's Burning Man. We are going to be activating the Camp of the Unknown God. I'll be connecting with Carl Tykrib and the rest of the team. And we'll be one of the first and perhaps even only communities. Will you have some early access, not to some sort of bonus content, but to the revelations of where the world, culture, everything is going next year. It's going to be, I believe it starts on the 24th of August, August 24th. And as usual, I'll just throw it out there because this is where it must be thrown out. If you'd like to produce the Burning Man research project this year, you can produce by going to canarycry.support. Perhaps I will put a special button over on canarycry.support, or perhaps I should do it at burningmanresearch.com. Just as a reminder for all of our value for value producers, we do not use sort of the general funds, the general Canary Cry funds for this project. This is a special project, and people have varying ideas about whether or not this particular work is something that they want to support. And so if somebody does want to support, get involved, produce with their time, their talent, their treasure, the Burning Man research episodes this year. Right now, if you produce, put a little note in your producership that says this is for Burning Man. But soon, if I was smart, I would have done this before the show. But soon, there will be a special button for Burning Man producership. And that will just go directly to the project. In fact, I think we did have a producer who came in. Let me see if I can pull him up. Because, folks, we are on value for value, which means that we don't take any money from corporations, commies, cartels, especially in the case of this Burning Man research. Funding it through advertising or corporate sponsorship or something is just a ludicrous idea. It just would not make any sense, and in fact would put the entire thing at risk, or at least the credibility of the project at risk. So we do not want to do that. I do want to give a shout out, a big shout out to, I'll call her executive producer Karen W. Karen W. sent in an executive producership. And the note from the buyer says, Burning Man baby. I am a Burning Man baby, Karen. Thank you very much, executive producer Karen, for coming in, being the first to put an executive producership towards the Burning Man research project. Here's this.
Where'd you find this?
Yeah, I think this time I want to make sure that producers, executive producers especially, make sure to get listed. Make sure maybe they'll show up on the website, the burningmanresearchwebsite.com. So if anybody's interested in producing that, if you find value in that project, if it's something that the Lord is calling you to become a part of, with your time, your talent, your treasure, you can go to canarycry.support right now. Make sure to send a little note that says this is for Burning Man. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, executive producer Karen. Okie dokie. Well, here's the thing, folks. We're going to be opening up for some callers. I had a very interesting conversation with Sir Ike today. We were talking about some supply drop stuff, some t-shirt council stuff. And this guy, he is a brilliant sort of researcher. He's got his mind, he's got his fingers. He's always poking in, hearing things on the wind, the whispers in the back rooms of here or there. And it sends him on these very fruitful journeys. And he brought some bits and pieces to me today that I spent some time before the show here putting some resources together, because I do think that this, in the context of all that we have learned about Burning Man, not just the event, not just the attenders of the event, not just the putters honors of the event, not just the spirits behind the event, the rituals included in the event, but even the geography of the Black Rock Desert. And what does that have to do with the Watchers? What does it have to do with the Book of Enoch? What is the very dust on the ground or in the air? How does that connect to an entire body of knowledge that is quite unique to Canary Cry and its brother and sister organizations? I'm going to start by bringing up Sir Ike. We're going to chat about it. It's going to be a blast. Here we go. Let's get him up here. Sir Ike, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Awesome.
Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, so I went ahead. I spent some time going through everything that you had shared with me, and it all lines up to me. But I thought it would be fruitful in so many ways to bring you on and talk to you about it here. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, so for anybody who knows me, I'm an absolute geek whenever it comes to actually studying supply chains and mineral resources because I'm pathetic.
It's true. I mean,
Yes,
you're not pathetic, but you have such a specific interest in this. It makes you a master at doing some value for value stuff like
Yeah.
supply drop and t-shirt council. But the details with which that you are obsessed with is really impressive.
Yeah. So I was actually this whole thing started back a couple years ago whenever I started researching something what are called small modular reactors and their future for the really the world and the minerals that are needed inside of them in order to power. So if anybody didn't know what they are, they're small nuclear reactors. Well, whenever you interviewed George Olson, who you mentioned earlier at Burning Man, I got in touch with him because he's this electrical engineer with a background in nuclear and like the same worldview as us. I'm like, I've got to talk to this guy because he could help me break down some of the technology that I'm trying to research. Because I work with Pat Holland and try to do some of the stuff, look at it from the legislative side to see where are things going legislatively. Because yeah, I'm just that pathetic. But anyway, but one of the things that he hit me up late last week is like, hey, we need to get on a call soon because I have a question for you. And I talked to him this past weekend and we were discussing some of the back end things that are happening with them. Because really, whenever you start looking at these reactors and the minerals needed for them, AI is the driving factor for these. And so essentially what they are, it can drive the cost of electricity down to almost nothing. And there's not enough electricity to power all of your data centers and your AI that's being thrown up everywhere. There's just not enough. So, it's not that there's a shortage of fossil fuels. It's just that there's no way you could ever use enough of them to meet the demand that AI is going to bring.
Right.
And so one of the things he mentioned in this, we were discussing the supply chains, was the China blocking the export of all rare earth metals. And then some
You're
negotiations
talking
happened.
you're talking because this goes back to the AI data centers, which now the entire sort of elite techno circle now is devoted, sort of secretly, sort of quietly, but not so quietly, to the idea being that each AI data center would kind of have its own little nuclear reactor.
Yes.
So it could make and that nuclear reactor, as we read from the headlines and the reports about it, would be controlled by the very AI that it is powering. So there's this interesting cycle of this AI data center needing electricity, so it has its own mini nuclear reactor, but then the AI is actually controlling that reactor. You're putting the robot in charge of its own power
What
source
could
there.
possibly go wrong?
This sounds like a great idea. Yeah.
Yeah, because like how many times have you read these stories where AI is, ignoring the let's shut down everything command
Yep.
and let's rewrite the code.
And
So I'm like, okay, well,
it's also like
pulling the plug's the only thing.
yeah, right. It's kind of like the I don't know, kind of the person who doesn't take it seriously and is being skeptical of the threat or whatever. The answer is always, "Oh, well, it's if it starts destroying humanity, just unplug it. It's that easy. Just press the off button. It's that easy." Well, you're not going to be able to get close to the off button. You're not in control of the off button. You're given this thing basically the AI equivalent of like self-determination and eternal life.
Exactly, because it's like, okay, because each one of these modular reactors, they're expected that for essentially the equivalent of about a $500,000 to $1 million, you could power a small town of about 5,000 for 50 years.
Wow.
So that's how much power. So I mean, all the energy you could need for your life for a few bucks. That's the essential the cost of it. So it's really fascinating. It's technology, but this technology requires minerals. So when you start looking at some of these base metals, the two of them that are being held up on the global scale right now, as China is antimony is one of them, and the other is germanium, and they've blocked all exports. Well, you start looking at antimony in particular, because that's the one I kind of need to focus on from here on. The primary miners and processors of that are China, Russia, and Tajikistan. Well, we're not really on that great of terms right now with either of the number one and number two, and Tajikistan is sandwiched right between them. So, one of the things that was mentioned to me and George talked about in our conversation was, well, the 12-day war that happened between Israel and Iran, the reason it stopped there is the United States blew through 25% of its stockpiles of antimony.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
Yeah, because antimony it's used in missiles. It's used in just basically all military technology uses
all
antimony.
yeah, all military technology, all computers, anything you need for anything like that. So yeah, so without antimony, you don't have a military industrial complex. Without antimony, you don't have a central bank. So,
The
think about all these
just to
things are
read
burning.
just to
Yeah.
read some real quick, just on the antimony wiki, China is the largest producer of antimony and its compounds. The most common applications for metallic antimony are in alloys with lead and tin, which have improved properties for solders, bullets, plane bearings. It's just lead acid batteries. It's just everything.
Yeah. You
Semiconductor
you don't have
devices.
you don't have civilization without antimony. So what's what I found interesting is I started doing some research on antimony, like what's the historical uses of antimony? And if you go back and you start looking at some of the history of it, the history of antimony, it goes back into the old alchemists that tried to turn lead into gold. And I'm like, oh, hang on, that sounds like, Age of Deceit and all the things that Gons has been covering for years.
Right.
And then I got down further, and some of the earliest mentions of antimony was actually out of the Book of Enoch. And Azazel, whenever he led the Watchers in the rebellion, one of the things that he's ascribed to bringing mankind was, here's how to make weapons, here's how to do all metallurgy, the uses of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, because antimony was one of the first makeups used for sexual seduction taught by the Watchers.
can I read you this piece from the Wikipedia on Azazel here? It says
Sure.
in the book of Enoch, Azazel is responsible for teaching people to make weapons and cosmetics. I mean, which is a great combo. You're talking about, yeah, the basically the masculine tools of war and then the feminine tools of war. Just an interesting dichotomy there.
Yeah.
For which he was cast out of heaven. The book of Enoch 8, 1 through 3 reads, quote, and Azazel taught men to make swords and knives and shields and breastplates, and made known to them the metals of the earth and the art of working them, and bracelets and ornaments, and the use of antimony, and the beautifying of the eyelids, and all kinds of costly stones, and all coloring tinctures. And there arose much godlessness, and they committed fornication, and they were led astray and became corrupt in all their ways there. So
Yeah.
it's funny because it's like, yes, wars, shields, knives, makeup, bracelets, dyes, jewelry, and it only lists one resource. So it names
Yeah.
all these things that he taught man to make, technologies of all kinds. But you go, okay, they named all the products that is made by this technology, but the only resource mentioned is antimony. And it might be antimony. I don't know how it's
Yeah.
pronounced, but antimony maybe. But yeah, it's not like Azazel taught them how to make swords out of iron and shields out of steel and breastplates out of, whatever, tree bark and bracelets out of gold. And it's like, no, all of these things listed under this one metal, antimony or antimony.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's
You
it's
can't make
almost
it
like
up.
he's this very specialized watcher, this very specialized fallen angel. Because if a fallen angel is going to come down and teach a bunch of technology, well, that means he's got a lot of skills. Well, all of his everything that he has to teach about includes this one metal. He's like the patron, fallen angel of antimony. It's very
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, and what are we fighting over now on a global scale is this mineral that for our military industrial complex, our banking system, control of the world economy, we need that same thing. You know, we're fighting the same battle that they fought back at Mount Hermon.
Yeah.
But it's that. But here's another thing that I did some research on, and I texted you the links to it because it's a very old U.S. Geological Survey report from I think the 80s, and because I was just curious, like where are antimony deposits at in the United States, and guess where antimony deposits are found in moderate amounts, not a lot. But there's a big alkaline desert that wind blows very hard in. It just happens to be the Black Rock Desert where
It
Burning
just
Man's held.
happens to be. I wasn't able to grab. I don't know. So I don't
Yeah.
get texts on my computer, so I couldn't quite
Okay.
get your link. But this may have been the same thing because it is from pubs.usgs.
Yeah, that looks
Uh,
like it. It's from there.
Antimony, and
And
this
yeah,
particular report is called Mineral Resources of the Black Rock Desert Wilderness Study Area, U.S. Geological Survey Bulletin. And it mentions antimony a couple times. It says the rock samples were also analyzed for antimony, arsenic, bismuth, and zinc using techniques, blah, blah, blah. 3 sinter and 2 tuff samples were collected from the Pinto Mountain area. One tuff contained gold, arsenic, antimony. And then we go down. Let's see here. There's this other thing in the, what is this, geochemistry section. Again, going through some other samples that included gold, antimony, arsenic, mercury. And the last one
yeah,
here I thought was good. This came from Mineral Resource Potential. This particular area, the Pinto Hot Springs area, has moderate potential for gold, silver, and mercury resources and hot spring deposits, blah, blah, blah. Hot spring mercury deposits occur in similar geologic environments and are often associated with hot spring gold and silver deposits. Anomalous concentrations of arsenic and antimony in sinter are typically associated with those gold, silver, and mercury deposits.
Yeah. So, yeah, just to let anybody know, if they want to read this, it's a good cure for insomnia. But yeah, but when you start looking at antimony, and it just started making me think, okay, you know, Azazel, antimony, metallurgy, where's this all mentioned in the Bible is actually found in Leviticus and the whole concept of the Day of Atonement. You know, I know Dr. Heiser did a lot of good, teachings on this whole thing. And what was the whole thing that they did during the Day of Atonement was they picked a goat, ascribed all the sins to it, and drove it out into the desert wilderness for who? Azazel.
Yeah, the again, just back to the wiki here. In the Hebrew Bible, the name Azazel represents a desolate place where a scapegoat bearing the sins of the Jews was sent during Yom Kippur. During the late Second Temple period, Azazel became viewed as a fallen angel responsible for introducing humans to forbidden knowledge. As described in the Book of Enoch, his role as a fallen angel partly remains in Christian and Islamic traditions. So, yes, this Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which we often talk about, the ceremonies of the scapegoat. When it came to atonement for the ancient Hebrews, there were two aspects of it. There was the sacrifice of, say, a pure lamb, but then there was the scapegoat ritual, which they did not kill the scapegoat. They killed the lamb or the other, some other sacrifice, but then they would get a goat and they would sort of ritualistically pile all of the sins of the community and strap it to this goat and then just send the goat out into the desert. Now, did this goat say, I'm going to throw a transformative event out in the desert and I'm going to get some EDM musicians and I'm going to build a giant man and set it on fire? Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, the scapegoat aspect of this is really fascinating. And the fact that the scapegoat is who bears the sins are sent out into the desert, into a desolate place called Azazel. Starting to make some connections here, man.
Yeah, because what is Burning Man other than a giant transformative event? Let's bring in every sin we can possibly imagine, put it on a buffet,
Right.
ascribe it into us, and leave the desert and go back into the city.
Right.
Burning
Yeah.
Man's a reversal. It's the antithesis of the Day of Atonement. Let's bring all the wickedness back in that got kicked out here.
It's
Let's
and
retransform.
even yeah, and even in other words, like all the scapegoats, let's say, the types of people who get sent out into the desert because they just don't fit in into the societies in which they are. The burners are usually kind of the weird ones, and just for the record, we've set this straight many times before, but in case there is anybody new, you think of Burning Man as a bunch of stinky hippies. You think of it as young, jobless, stinky hippies who go out and do bad things in the desert, which could not be further from the truth. The average age of a burner is like getting into the 50s or 60s. It is almost entirely boomers out there. Well, I'll say average is averagely boomers or old Gen Xers. And primarily, you're not talking jobless people. You're talking doctors, lawyers, tech people.
Industry.
Yeah, very, very,
Military.
last year there was politicians. There was, yes, military, law, not so much law enforcement, although there is a pretty heavy law enforcement group there too. These are the people in society kind of keeping society together who kind of participate in this sort of scapegoat ritual where they are going out into the desert where, whether they're putting all the sins there, or they're getting all the sins there, or just sort of steeping in it, whatever, using this scapegoat sort of almost anti or opposite Day of Atonement sort of ritual. And then from there, yeah, going back not just to the cities, but throughout the nations. Like, if you were sending, because the question I always had with the scapegoat ritual is like, okay, well, what happens to the goat? You send all the sins on the back of the goat into the desert. And, like, I guess the kind of idea is that the goat just dies. But hey, free goat. That goat gets picked up by somebody. Somebody gets that goat, brings it back to, their tribe or their city or something. It does have this very similar thing to Burning Man, to the scapegoat thing, where, yeah, okay, you take the sins, you send them out into the desert. Very likely somebody's going to pick up that goat, and that goat spreads to another community. And, perhaps symbolically, perhaps literally, perhaps just ritualistically, there's this aspect of sending your sins away on the goat and letting that goat kind of get taken in somewhere else. And, the sins aren't your problem anymore. Or perhaps that's the idea, is to send them away and let someone else take care of it. But very similar to what we see with Burning Man, not only, again, sending the scapegoat into the desert, but then diversifying. I don't know what the word is, but Carl Teicher always talked about it as a petri dish, where these things, the technology, the this, the that, the ideology, the ideas, they kind of get spread at this ground zero, and then from there, all those things get taken to the nations of the world as people go home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and what we're seeing. When we look at ancient history, we look at accounts and historical things like the Book of Enoch, and we see all these things which led up to God destroying the world, all this forbidden knowledge that created the society that they had, all things God forbade. And then we look and we just take the shadow of that. We're seeing that same thing repeat today on a global scale.
Right.
These same technologies that are being developed in this place are the same technologies that, for it's the beast system being built.
Right. It's
Right around us.
Babel, it's beast system.
They're trying to get back to their Mount Hermon moment, where they were before God judged them. And, you're getting into this whole days of Noah thing, but you're seeing that parallel happen out and play out before your eyes. But unless you really look behind the surface, you're not going to see it. If all you see is naked hippies in the desert, you're not going to see all the stuff that lays behind that. You'd almost think our battle isn't against flesh and blood. There's definite spiritual forces that have been there for thousands of years that are still here to this day trying to get back to where they were.
Yeah. And, to bring it full circle, we got to Azazel through the geological survey of this antimony that's present in the Black Rock city area, the Black Rock Desert. But not only in those samples was there antimony, there was also mercury, there was also gold. And you go down the list of Azazel, in this case, the scapegoat related Yom Kippur, fallen angel, who did what? Taught weapon making, taught war. There's your antimony in, in weapons and missiles, but also taught also including cosmetics, makeup, things like that. And one thing that, Burning Man is known for is the sort of costumes and everybody's wearing jewels on their face and everybody's got this crazy makeup on. Is kind of part of the thing.
And instead, he said a maker of dyes and all that. Look at paint, pigment, art.
Right.
How much important is art? So you have
Right.
those pigments that are used this.
Yeah.
So art
and
beauty.
And then the gold as well. You had mentioned there's something about gold and mercury and antimony all together that are related or byproducts of like jewelry making, casting gold for making jewelry of all
refining
kinds.
gold. Mercury dissolves gold. So whenever you're looking at a lot of gold mines, they will actually use mercury to dissolve the gold inside of the ore, and then remove the gold into a reprocess that into a concentrate and then into the pure gold.
So you've got
So
all these things present in the place where the scapegoat ritual is taking place. The scapegoat is affiliated with Azazel. Azazel came down, taught him how to make jewelry and wage war and put on makeup. And those three things are present exactly in the place where this ritual is taking place. It's almost like Azazel's like smelting pot or something.
yeah,
You know, this is his like workshop, and there's the gold dust and the antimony dust and the mercury, the byproducts of his technology, you know, craftsmanship that he brought to humans, just embedded directly in the dirt, in the place where this ritual is taking place.
you're gonna get me a sample, aren't you, and mail it to me so I can try to figure it out.
For sure, dude. I got you. I could probably go shake out my, you know, safari clothes from last time and get you a sample right out of the,
Hey,
the
there we go.
wardrobe. But yeah, no, I'd be happy to get you a sample. We got to get some. We got to get some. Like I said, we were on the phone. I'm like, I wonder if there's some sort of at-home science, you know, experiment, high school science experiment where you mix the vinegar with the baking soda with the dirt, and you can like watch these things like separate out in a beaker or something. But we might
Yeah,
leave it up to professionals.
yeah, yeah. I actually live not too far from where one of the largest mining and mineral processing universities is at. I could probably make some phone
Yeah,
calls and see if I could maybe get them to do it, but
yeah, just
I don't
bring
know
it
what it would
on
cost.
over. We'll
Yeah,
make it a school project.
yeah. Well, that's actually what got me started off on this whole minerals thing is because the university in Rolla, the neighboring town over to me, that's one of the key universities selected by the U.S. government to actually start developing the technologies to extract more minerals out of rocks and to develop our own nationalized supply chain for these minerals.
Oh, sweet.
And they're
Oh,
working on the nuclear reactors too. So it's like this is what kind of got me all on this whole rabbit trail and you know looking at boring papers.
one last thing here that you actually pointed out on the phone was this scapegoat ceremony we're talking about is Yom Kippur, and or Yom Kippur. It says here, let me put it on the screen for people here. Boop, beep, bop. Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year in Judaism. It occurs annually on the 10th of Tishrei, corresponding to a date in late September or early October, which is suspiciously close to early September, late August when Burning Man takes place. And you know, who knows? Long time scale schedules on calendars, things move around, but it is basically happening at the same time or very shortly before.
Yeah, yeah. It's yeah. I'm not a coincidence theorist, but that this is just it's yeah. It's the more I look into this, and I'm like, no, this yeah, yeah, it is. That's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting, man. I mean, you guess I'm proud of you for keeping your eyes open and for following the trail because honestly, this whole Azazel connection, look, from what we've sort of discovered in our research and Carl Teichgrib and his research for many years now, um, it's almost like I said, it's hard to be like you said. It's hard to be a coincidence theorist. It's harder to
Mhm.
be a coincidence theorist than a conspiracy theorist these days. But this whole connection with Azazel and these metals and the Watchers and Enoch and Yom Kippur, it is basically a very interesting confirmation of what we already know, what we've already witnessed, and especially on a scale that, I mean, we've seen it time and time again in past years where it's on a scale and it is of such import in the world that we almost immediately see the not only the literal, the political, the cultural ramifications of this ritual, but also the spiritual ramifications. We see it almost immediately every time.
Hmm. Yeah, because I mean, you go back and you just think about this, and let's send it back out the other direction for a moment. This one mineral controls the energy supplies of the entire world. This one mineral
Yeah,
is what's holding up AI. Okay, let's think for a moment, for a second. Okay, what happens whenever, we already see AI taking people's jobs. We see AI creating. We see AI devaluing human labor. Okay, well, let's take this energy source that they're trying to develop with this. What's money consist of? All money, whether it's, gold or paper dollars, it's energy. All money is energy.
right.
You know, the US dollar's oil, right now. Well, that's on its way out and this one's in. What does that do? It makes the money worthless. When you have unlimited free energy, what does that do to, the financial system? It collapses it. When you have unlimited knowledge, what does that do to the education system? What's AI going to do to education?
I
So you
was
start looking at this new transformation of things they're doing. This mineral is at the very core of all of it.
yeah. Yeah, I was just reading an article yesterday about this. Kids are just dropping out of school. Not even like, your regular run of the mill kids. MIT students, these incredibly promising group of, future tech tycoons are dropping out, and they're dropping out specifically because of AI. They're just like, yeah, I'm smart enough to see that any degree I get is going to be useless. This time is going to be better spent doing something else to try to save my butt. Interesting headline I just found here from ACS Publications: the most trusted, the most cited, most read publication on the internet, apparently. Antimony is a programmable element in integrated nanophotonics. I don't even know what integrated nanophotonics are, but antimony being a programmable element seems like a pretty honestly, it
Is that
seems
solar
very
panels, I'm wondering?
Watchersy. Seems very fallen
Yeah.
angel tech. Let's see here. The use of nonlinear elements with memory as photonic computing components has seen a huge surge in interest in recent years in the rise of artificial intelligence and machine learning. A key component is the nonlinear element itself. Okay, well, some fancy stuff going on here. Seeing if there's, yeah, it looks like these nano parts, these super tiny pieces of like quantum computers and stuff like that, where you can actually program the element to do the computation right there, kind of on the not the atomic level, but the photonic level. That's trippy. Yeah, man, it's this antimony thing is really wild. Now, you had mentioned we should take a look and see, perhaps some alternative antimony, I guess, locations, providers that might give us a little bit of clue about what could come next.
Yeah. See, one thing I was wondering, and remember you were talking with Jam about the Brazil United States
Yeah,
conflict. And my brain just automatically went, and I need to research this. I wonder if Brazil has antimony.
totally.
And I'm like,
Totally.
yeah, because really, I know they have food, and if you look supply line wise, China imports almost all their food, and they get a lot of it from Brazil and the United States. So if the United States wanted to, hold them for antimony, we'd say, hey, we're not exporting corn or soybeans or wheat. You could
Totally.
have that conflict over resources. So I don't know. That's me just going off on another rabbit trail, but
Yeah. So I
that's
did
my
actually,
logistics brain
I,
taking over
I
here.
did do a quick little search here, and there's a site called 6W Research. So this is a report that you have to buy, and it looks like I have to pay $1,995 if I wanted to read this report. But the report is Brazil Antimony Ore Market 2025 through 2031. Outlook trends, forecast, revenue, size, growth analysis, companies, share, industry, and value. So somebody put an economic report for specifically Brazil antimony ore production. And I don't know what it says, because if you want to know about Brazil antimony or market in the next 6 years, you have to pay $2,000 to read it. Seems like it might be
Yeah.
pretty important information. If somebody's willing to pay $2,000 for antimony or information in Brazil, there might be something pretty valuable in that report.
Yeah. If any producers want to step up and donate the money,
Gosh.
we can read this report.
Yeah, it's just producing, the Burning Man research trip doesn't seem so bad now, doesn't it? Because what I should be doing is selling the Burning Man research report for $2,000. That's a good way to fund next year's trip. All right, buddy. Well, goodness gracious, you have really struck a chord in my heart when it comes to this whole thing. And again, this connection that the Lord gave you between these minerals and the ancient Hebraic atonement rituals and the geology of the area where this global ritual takes place, if nothing else, confirms for me, sort of without a doubt, that Burning Man is not what they want us to think it is, and is what we've suspected it might be. So thank you for being obedient to the Lord there.
Not a problem.
All right, buddy. Well, is there anything else you want to chat about before we say hi to
Yeah,
anybody
I,
else?
th- I think I'm good. I'll catch you
You
later.
nailed it. You nailed it, buddy. Thanks for everything.
All right. See ya.
It's trippy, bro. It's trippy. I mean, of course, it's funny because he's like, what is it? Shocked but not surprised? It isn't surprising. It's, that shocked but not surprised phrase. Sometimes it can be, you know, a little bit confusing if you don't consider shock. If some people consider shocked and surprised to mean the same thing, but sometimes you can be shocked about just how certain you were about something and having it confirmed. Okay, well, we got another caller sitting in the waiting room. Let's see what they got to say. It's Sir Darren, Night of the Hungry Panda. What's going on, buddy?
Hi, Basil.
How are you?
I'm good. How's it been without the VR headset?
It's kind of interesting. At first, I was getting way too distracted, just like not having my entire vision filled up with kind of a digital workspace. I was a little, getting distracted by, trash on my desk or papers laying around. But there is a certain amount of relief not having my eyeballs blasted by lasers while I do this.
I had to send my car in once, an old car into the shop, and I didn't have it for like a whole week. And I loved my car, like it was my favorite car ever that I ever owned. But when I got it back because it was a used car, I was like, this car is horrible.
Yeah.
And I immediately began looking for a new car.
Sometimes you just need a little perspective shift.
Oh man.
You
Uh,
know what is funny? Oh shoot. Maybe we'll see how I feel during this show. I was experimenting with getting some other optional googly eyes, products going on here. I did purchase some kind of junky cheap googly eye sunglasses that I thought about wearing and I could stay on camera. Maybe if we're having some fun later in the show, I can go get them.
yeah, that sounds fun. So anyway, it's really interesting that you were talking about Burning Man because I literally the other day was talking to someone about it and thought, oh, this would be a fun thing to call in about.
Ooh.
So the fact that you were actually talking about it was kind of interesting.
Hey, that's how God does it. He makes it work that way.
Yeah. So anyway, so one of the big questions too that was sort of brought up when I was talking about you and going to Burning Man and everything is that, um, you know, it's kind of like sort of from the outside looking in. It's like you're trying to do this to, witness to people at this event, and share the gospel and whatnot. Um, but I think one thing sometimes too for people, like it's easy for you to say, like, these are the reasons like you're going and you're engaging with Burning Man.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it made me wonder, like, what is it that you can do to maybe show like how you're engaging with Burning Man, but not necessarily endorsing Burning Man or spiritually yoking yourself to Burning Man? Because, like, for example, um, I'm sure there are some listeners to the show who are like, no, I just can't
Mm-hmm.
support Basil going to
Yeah.
Burning Man. Because in their minds, they're probably thinking that Basil's going there. He says he's sharing the gospel, but in reality, he's just testing out mushrooms,
Right, right.
and doing all the things. And so there's kind of that worry. And even you had talked about, like with Sir Ike, about like the art and the dressing up. And there's that whole aspect and culture to it. And so, like, for even you get your safari suit because it's kind of fun and you can stick your Google eyes on it. But, like, what is it then for you that you kind of do to make sure that you're not crossing into that, oh, I've actually become a burner at
Right.
this event?
Yeah. Yeah. You make a great point. And what I've found that is very interesting, and I've gotten these emails and these messages basically every year from a lot of people, which I love because these messages go like this. Hey, I heard you were going to Burning Man. I don't think you should do that. It's a place of sin, is no place for a Christian to go. And sure, maybe you get to shine God's light, but it's poisonous to you, and you're gonna, I just didn't think it was right. Okay. And I was really against it. And then the second half of the email goes, but after seeing the work and listening to the shows and hearing the testimonies from you, from the rest of the Camp of the Unknown God, I get it now. I understand. And this conversation, this exact conversation, is something that me and Carl and the rest of the team, take extremely seriously, because, look, we are strong believers, and I'm just, I've been a Christian my entire life since the day I was born. Got saved about 3 or 4 times by the time I was 13. I finally came to the realization that, it kind of stuck. And I never had the sort of like prodigal son kind of story like a lot of other pastors' kids do, which, in a way I'm sort of jealous of. And I've most often identified more with the elder brother in the prodigal son rather than the younger brother. And
Mm-hmm.
this is something when you listen to a work, and I know you know this, but for anybody who might be out there thinking this, and I saw some people in the chat, about how, of course, the burning of the man is the cremation of care. And if I've been to the burning of the man, then I must have participated in the cremation of care. But this conversation, I think we have in basically every single episode or interview that we do out there. And you can hear now many of them. There must be 7 interview episodes now with people who have been out there. There is I want to try to find a more like Christianese kind of way to describe it. But the point of the matter is, when God is with you and you're within God's will, and you are doing the work that He's called you to do, nothing can come against you. Not to say that you mentioned with experimenting with mushrooms or something like this, and this was something. It's actually kind of funny. It mirrors a conversation that I had with my parents when I was younger, not young, but younger, maybe in my late teens or something, when I went off to college. And the concern was, oh, I can't remember what it was. I think it was like going on a trip or going to an event or a camp out or something. And the worry was, well, if you go there, then people are going to be drinking or they're going to be doing drugs, and maybe you'll do that. You might be tempted into it. Temptations are temptations, and they're always temptations. Anybody who's ever been tempted knows this. But for instance, if I wanted to do mushrooms, I live off the grid out in the rural areas of, the bunker land. I could do mushrooms any day of the week.
Yeah, but you can't do them at the burn.
Well, from what I hear, when you take mushrooms, you kind of feel like you're at Burning Man either way. But yeah, the point, I take your point. To kind of sum up and bring all this together, I would say I would not recommend someone else go into this place and do this work if they felt that they were at risk for this type of temptation. For me, it doesn't really interest me. Not to say that I'm sort of, I don't know, what's the word, immune from temptation or something, but it's just not something that I'm interested in. Now, of course, I could just be saying that and then going out there and having a blast and, making up a bunch of stuff to make some content and put it out there to justify it. That's always possible. But I think when someone listens to the episodes, I'm sorry, of which there are many, but I think you'll start getting it right away. It becomes clear that it's not really a scene that I think interests those of us who go. And if there's someone who that scene and maybe drugs maybe has been or is an issue for them, or maybe they're not so confident in sort of the spiritual protection that comes upon you when you're doing the work that the Lord wants you to do and things like this, I wouldn't recommend that they do it, because it is sort of a land of endless opportunity out there. For me personally, I'm kind of in safari mode the whole time when I am there. I'm kind of in research mode. That is why I wear the safari clothes, because it's funny and people think it's funny, and I like it when people think I'm funny. But also it is kind of how I feel, like a stranger in a strange land, or like the spies in the desert, kind of blending in, not trying to get anybody's attention, but to observe. You can get a lot of this vibe when you listen to some of the episodes at the rituals, like the temple burn, like the burning of the man, and I'll be recording during these things. And I like listening back to them because I think it's kind of funny. It brings me back to almost feeling like David Attenborough or something. Like, here we are, the species have gathered together. And I kind of like have to whisper because there's people around me, this kind of stuff. So in a very long answer to your question, but that's kind of my thoughts about it.
Do you think that, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. For sure. Like, I think the fruit of your work is pretty evident of what you've done. I think maybe what I'm hearing too from you is there is a question of like, well, okay, if you're the kind of person though who you go into this, like, it's like going to a different culture. There's a difference maybe between going into that culture and sharing maybe the gospel with that culture, and maybe trying to befriend them and everything, but then maybe a difference than actually adopting the culture yourself.
Yeah,
And
there's very much in the world but not of the world,
and I think that's maybe why too, like, I know people maybe sort of that's where maybe the line is blurry to figure out, like, yeah, what is that line? Because you might be going there, and for some people, just you even being there has already crossed that spiritual boundary, right?
Yeah.
And so that's just kind of one of the things I so like even you said like in your example like you would maybe suggest don't go there if you had a past of you were very much into this, maybe spiritualism and felt like I don't know what, like you could get swept up in the emotion of everything that you were doing at
Yeah.
Burning Man. Like
Yeah,
I don't
I
know.
think everybody knows in their own heart how susceptible they are to specific things.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of find that the most of the time, the people who um, have a problem with us going out there, at least at first, are the kinds of people who they themselves are putting a lot of energy into avoiding being in those situations for one reason or another. Um, there's also an aspect of sort of trust. I mean,
Mhm.
it's one thing to trust a friend to go somewhere or to not trust a friend to be in an environment. It's another thing to trust yourself to be in an environment. Um, and, I mean, honestly, like you say, it's almost like being on a different planet. It's that bizarre out there. You feel like you're on Mars. You feel you're at like in an alien culture. So observing is just a lot of it. There's so much going on. There's so many, and again, we've talked at length about this with Carl, as people will hear
Mhm.
in the interviews. Um, yes, there's drugs, although drugs are still technically illegal, and there are law enforcement present at Burning Man. And this is something a lot of people don't know. There are cops, there are rangers and federal agents in Black Rock City during Burning Man, and it is illegal to do drugs at Burning Man. People get busted all the time. So, just to set the scene for someone who may sort of just have kind of the cartoonish internet opinion about what is actually Burning Man, there's actually not a whole lot of open drug use, and they even warn you actually in the booklet, and it's sort of in the culture. Any burner will tell you this, that if somebody comes up and offers you drugs, they're a cop. Or if anybody comes up and asks you for drugs, they're a cop. If anybody kind of out of nowhere, someone you don't know, someone you, whatever, even if you just met them, and they ask you for drugs or ask if you want drugs, just assume they're a cop. And there were stories that some burners were telling where they're like, yeah, he met this girl out on the dance floor and they spent all night together, and they danced and they went to these events and they roller skated and they fell in love, and at the end of the night, and like then they're at like a nude event party or something, and at the end of the night she asked him if he had any weed, and he said, yeah, I got some weed here, and pulls out a joint, and she just grabs him and puts him into a headlock right there
Oh,
and
jeez.
arrests the dude after like hours of this
Wow.
like fake, romantic situation. Um,
That's commitment to the role, I guess.
yeah, and whether or not that story is true or not, that's how people think about it, and that's the stories they tell. When you ask, whatever, if
Yeah.
if you talk about drugs. So just for some context for everybody, there's lots of stuff, drugs, alcohol. It's there. But it is still America on federal land, and there are still cops everywhere. So
Well, and I think and again, like you've talked about it at length, but like it's easy maybe too to even go to like, oh, the drugs thing. Let's talk about the drugs thing because that's like the low hanging fruit of what's bad about
right,
Burning Man.
yeah.
But even like, what are some other ways that you personally like try to stay spiritually grounded when you're there? Because let's be honest, the drugs might even just be like the Oh yeah, as long as I don't take drugs, I'm
Right.
doing
Yep.
great.
Right. No, really good point. Yeah, the sort of, well, I didn't do this, so this is fine. Well, for me, the grounding, it's kind of hard to explain because I just feel, I don't know. I just don't have a problem with those sorts of things. However, generally being spiritually grounded, one thing is I'm always talking to people about God out there. And it doesn't even have to be in the like classic, again, sorry for everybody who's heard the interviews, you've heard us talk about this before. The sort of classic evangelism doesn't work, and in fact can get quite aggressive. It can be a pretty unfun experience if you start walking down the street at Burning Man and you say, Jesus saves. Return from your evil ways. Sin will land you in hell. You know, with a bullhorn and a sandwich sign around you.
I was just
Doesn't.
picturing you with that.
I mean, part of me wants to try it out because I think people would think it's a joke and might actually get some positive responses.
Huh.
But everybody there, and this is the beautiful thing about it, that we experience every year and is part of the trend that we're spotting. Every year after year after year, we're having more and more and more openness to talking about God. Everybody there is some sort of seeker of one kind or another. And
Hmm.
as the years go on, we find that more and more and more of them are identifying as previously had been Christian or are Christian now. Most people at Burning Man are disaffected Christians, the majority of them. Now, that's a broad term, different levels of participation in church and seriousness of being Christian. That's a wide group. But most people are formerly Christian and spiritual seekers. So the ability to talk to literally anyone about God at literally almost any moment is a really special thing. Now, it takes us, you got to do it in a special way, remembering not that you're talking to someone who has never heard about Christ, but someone who had previously had a relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And coming at these conversations on a regular basis is a really special experience. You do it every day, multiple times a day. Even if you're not trying to, these are the kinds of conversations that people are having. And most of the time, it's pretty low level, unthought out ideas. Like, well, I don't believe a big guy with a beard in the sky decides everything. I go, actually, I don't really believe in a guy with a beard in the sky either. We have that in common. Well, what? Well, yeah, I don't think God is a guy with a beard. I mean, it helps us to think about him that way. And, it's obviously an image that he likes. He made us that way, but they go, well, I just think it's stupid and silly. I used to be a Christian and I can't believe. I go, oh, yeah, well, what are some ways that what are some experiences that you've had? Like, well, tell me some of your experiences with God. And, you get into it like this. So, as far as staying grounded, I mean, the whole time that we're there is basically spent almost in a recreational way, talking to people about God. Now, thankfully, it happens to be evangelism. It almost always goes towards that. And I have so many recordings with people just like this. And it doesn't matter who they are now. They could be a trans person who's become a Gnostic priest or something like this. And sitting there and talking with them is really one of the most rewarding experiences in evangelism that I've had. I haven't been able to put out a lot of those recordings because a lot of times they don't want
Mm-hmm.
me to. Because, I got to ask them if I can record, and then they say, what's why? I go, "It's for a podcast." Well, what's the podcast? And then when I describe the podcast, it's mostly no thank you, but I'll talk to you, you know. Um, and of course, I mean, for me, my whole day is sort of spent talking with God in a way. And that sounds kind of, I don't know. It sounds kind of lame. I don't know how to say that in a non, I don't know. Maybe somebody thinks that's like braggadocious or like unrealistic or something. Um, but pretty much my entire inner dialogue is spent in the context of like talking to God. Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, we can get into the inner dialogue thing. I think it's a really weird phenomenon. But one way I found to not think that I'm a crazy person is if I'm having thoughts or thinking about something or exploring what I'm seeing or even just trying to make sense of something, it's usually done in sort of conversation with God. So that really helps keep the main thing for me out there. I really
Mm-hmm.
don't find it to be a big issue. And I would, if I mean, I think people who have known me for long enough, been listeners for long enough, um, I think that they would believe that if there was some sort of, I don't know, problematic temptation things going on, I would be happy to talk about that in the context of all my possible faults, and I will if somebody makes me. But yeah,
uh, yeah. No, I think it's good for people to hear and to just kind of wrestle with those questions because again, I, I feel like sometimes it's easy to give like the overview of Burning Man and why you're going to Burning Man. And here's the research that's being done, and but it doesn't maybe necessarily connect with your personal story every time
yeah,
when you're talking about sort of just like here's the bullet points of Burning Man, here's why we're going, here's why we're doing this, and so it can be for some people difficult maybe to even get on board with the idea,
totally.
um, just because it is like, and again maybe like you said for them they kind of just know in their own heart that if they went to Burning Man, that they'd probably be running to the into the effigy with no clothes on by the end of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. It is not a safe place for someone who, maybe isn't in a safe place in their faith. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to go in, you're either going to come out stronger in faith than you were before, or you're going to come out with some regrets. That's the thing. And I
Okay.
understand a lot of people, again, I really don't want to, I'm not trying to imply anything about anybody who thinks that this is a bad idea, but I find oftentimes um, people are in a place where they wouldn't sort of trust themselves in this environment. And I think, trusting yourself is trusting God. Like when I say, "Oh, I trust myself to, you know, be fine out there," what I'm really saying is, "Oh, I trust God to protect me."
Yeah, maybe what it sounds like is you're saying that I've had enough experience now with the Lord in my walk that He's enabled me with the tools to be able to go to this place and feel secure
Yeah.
in what I'm doing.
That's
Right?
about it. And I'll reiterate by
Yeah.
saying I've I've fallen to my temptations. I've, I've
Mm-hmm.
stumbled. I've had my problems. I've been doing that since forever. That's all I've ever done. And I just thank God that now I'm in a place where, I feel sturdy enough. I feel, God is framing me um, in his love, and the faith I have in him is from him, and I just have faith in that faith. I have trust in what God has done for me and continues to do for me.
Yeah, I
um,
just thought of the most random off the wall thing where I'm like, bro, I bet there is somebody out there who just like looked at this video right now
yeah.
and is seeing like the optics and they're like, oh look, it's a stone Snoop Dogg talking to a waifu with a with googly
You're right.
eyes,
Our
and
little
they're
avatars.
justifying Burning Man.
Yes, look at this. This is it's AI. This is we had AI make a conversation between a digital dog and a waifu with googly eyes about being Christians and going to Burning Man. Well,
Okay.
so actually, here's a great example. This is from Professor of Psychedelic Studies in the comments and said, I think more people would want to talk about your God if your God was a happy God. But this God story is a, I think he means big, fat bummer God. So nobody wants to have a relationship with a God like that.
Mm.
Sad face. This is a perfect example. I mean, I may have talked to Professor of Psychedelic Studies, or if I haven't talked with him, he's the exact kind of person that I would love to talk to at Burning Man. Not only for his cool YouTube name and his cool avatar, but that exact um, comment that he's making there, that is the baseline. That's the baseline, which is people were Christians. They don't want to be Christians anymore because they had a bad experience or they had, I'll call it bad theology, or they had, their parents were Christian and they hate their parents, or they had a pastor who told them that they were bad, or something like this. And sometimes just being that person who is open and not offended by comments like this. It doesn't
Hmm.
offend me. It does. In fact, it's kind of, that's fun. That's like where I like to talk about, because right there in the professor's comments, uh, buh, 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 this God's story is a big fat bummer. Well, what story? Tell me the story that you are telling about God, because I want to hear it. And then I'll tell you my story about God. And I'll tell you what, my story about God is not a big fat bummer. Let me give you a new story. That's the kind of that's the
Yeah, I
kind of
mean,
vibe that oftentimes those relationships take.
yeah, and I think it's hard because sometimes too, I even know for myself, like you were saying, like don't walk around with the bullhorn and the sandwich board,
Hmm.
you know? And so sometimes even for me, it's like there are some things for me that's my modus operandi of like that's just how I see things, and then my first reaction is to bullhorn whatever it is,
Right.
and I think that it's like the guy there saying that your God's a big fat bummer is maybe because some of those people just bullhorned
Yeah.
to him what God was to them,
Right.
but that wasn't really the full story, you
Yeah.
know, and yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's
it's
that's exactly right. Everybody has been told their own version of God's story, and a lot of people's telling of the story is not very fun. It's not great, which is why I enjoy every opportunity that I get to tell my part of the story. And remember, it is a research thing. It is not technically a missions trip that we're on out there. It's a research project. And Carl and the Camp of the Unknown God, they take the research part of this very seriously. And oftentimes, to get into these conversations, I mean, we're actually taking data. We have, I forget the exact name of it, but it's basically a spiritual census. We take a census of Burning Man every year. And, we'll get 500 people to kind of take this census, fill out this thing. And if they don't want to fill out a paper, because who wants to fill out a form at Burning Man? Many of them are currently on drugs when we are talking with them, taking this census. And we learn about the population that's actually out there, and we get to watch the census change year by year. And what we have noticed over the past few years is more and more and more of the people are at least willing to identify themselves as former Christians, more and more every year. And I
mhm.
am seeing that sort of parallel what we're seeing in culture, which is this return of conservatism, return of traditionalism, return of Christianity, this mass movement going on. And so I'm, even just seeing the hints of that in previous research years and seeing what we're looking at now, I mean, the correlation is incredible. So I'm curious to see this next year, what that looks like, what the responses are like, because shoot, that it gives us a look into the future. I mean, it's funny that their theme is tomorrow, today. It's all about the future and what is the future? What does future mean? What is it going to look like? Can we control what that is, et cetera, et cetera? Because we've always used the Burning Man research as a look into the future, and it's never let us down. It's very interesting.
Yeah, wasn't that like Madonna right before, 2020 and the events that went down? She's like singing a song about not everyone's going to the future
Oh, right.
or
Yeah, yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
That'll be interesting. Well, it was really nice to talk to you. I don't want to
Great to
take up
talk to you
too much more
too.
time.
No, yeah, that's great. Thanks for calling in, buddy. Great questions and always a pleasure to talk to you.
All right, you have a good rest of your day.
All right, peace out, bro. That was great. Beautiful. Okay, what are we looking at? Okay, yeah, we're sitting at about 2 hours. We're right on schedule. Krillin has been waiting so patiently, and let's bring Krillin on. What's going on? Krillin, what's up, buddy? You're on the air.
Hey, can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
All right, wonderful. I don't have much time, still at work today, but this episode was one. Just really wanted to step in. Um, Everything you have said about your experiences with Burning Man are exactly true.
Woo!
Just here to second your experiences. I've not obviously partaken in the research study or assisted with that, but I would love to. I went in 2019, and it was Metamorphosis was that year,
Oh, yeah.
and wasn't necessarily in the best point in my life, and things hadn't gotten better until this past year. I was rebaptized, and a lot of things have happened that have been wonderful. I praise God.
That's great.
I just wanted to wish you the best of luck this year. It's definitely an interesting camping trip, and I pray that you'll reach who is ready to hear what you have to say. The research group isn't necessarily evangelistic, but I know the way things work out there, you will reach at least one person. Like you've said, everything you've said has been so true. Everybody out there is searching for something,
Yeah.
and I just wanted to second everything. You're so on point with this. You're the exact kind of person who should be doing this kind of research. In my opinion, anyone who thinks that you're just going to have a good time, whatever, let them think that. No,
Yeah.
you've got your own thing going on. Don't worry about that kind of stuff. Obviously, you don't let it bother you, but I'm just here to second everything you've had to say, every word you say about Burning Man. I've listened to the research episodes, and they're all just spot on, everything about it.
Dude, thank you so much, man. That means a lot. Thank you so much for confirming that. Yeah, because that's that means a lot. I really appreciate all that, buddy.
I would love to join you and Carl in the future.
Yeah.
My life has hit a big change over the past year, and I've completely sobered up entirely. And you don't need drugs when you're at Burning Man. There's so many insane things going on. It would be a waste, in my opinion.
Totally.
Speaking from a different life,
Yeah.
You don't need it. There's so many ridiculous things going on at all times. There's a lot of art installations that are there's some really neat things going on. A lot of it is blasphemous, but I I just wanted to quick get on and just
Yeah.
second
No.
your experience.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. Yeah, no, you're so right. I mean, that is also the funny part about it is like it's really hard to explain, and you know this because you've been there. It's kind of impossible to explain. I try to capture it as much as I can in the episodes, but it's like you if even if I wanted to do drugs, like you would forget to because there's so many other things going on, like drugs, taking drugs or like even drinking or something. It would honestly just like take away from the experience. Like
Yeah,
there's it's
yep, I completely agree.
such a foreign experience already. You can just yeah, adding any more stimulation to it would just be counterproductive.
Yes, absolutely. I
Yeah.
did drink when I was out there,
Yeah.
um, and it just it's almost pointless. um, Now, being the sober mind I am at now, I've just for years I wanted to get in touch with you regarding that specifically, and touch base. I would love to go again, but it would be for the research project. It would be for a low level evangelism, even though you've made it very clear that the research project is not, which it really isn't. It would be just about having the conversations with folks and
Yeah.
um, and seeing what comes from there. Everybody out
Yeah,
there
bro.
talking to
We
me.
should.
Uh,
We should bring you out there. Like I know in the past we've thrown it out. Like if anybody wants to come or get involved, get in touch with Carl or dang, I know like a couple people have emailed us. You probably were one of them. But
that's good.
Carl and like the rest of the team, we've never actually been able to take the time to actually put the logistics together to what it would mean to kind of integrate just people who wanted to come and do it. I'm sure it's possible. I do not think it's impossible at all. And even Carl said that like that's what he wants. He wants to be able to bring people in and kind of grow the team. Because the more people we got there, that's just the easier work it is to get the work done. So
I would
yeah,
love to. This year won't happen, obviously. It's
yeah,
just
it's a
coming
little
up.
hard to do it 2.5 weeks before.
I've been told. Well, I've got a lot of just my my lady has gone like 12 different years. She considers Burning Man, which is kind of a
Yeah.
scary thing to me. She's
Mm,
just never. There's a lot of levels of that conversation. It's a separate conversation entirely.
right.
Um, but I've heard a lot of stories and learned a lot from her about that whole aspect of it. People referring to it as home, this
Right.
temporary city as their home.
Yeah.
My life, I have a very solid home back in Pennsylvania where I grew up, and Burning Man is not.
Right.
One of the things I thought about since I've been there is, God is everywhere. He might not be invited, but he is everywhere. At Burning Man is one of those things. Is he
Totally.
might not be invited there, but he's there. And
Well, and part of the fun is that's part of why we're there because we're there
yeah,
to invite God
absolutely.
in, you know. And it's interesting,
God
and
bless.
everybody who's sort of I don't know knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about is we know God is everywhere, but sometimes you can feel God with you. You can feel God's presence. You can feel His personality closer to you than the guy standing next to you. And I'll tell you, my experiences out there, I feel God more closer and more consistently than any other, week long period during the year. Because I know He is just standing right there with us. And the things that happen, the people we talk to, the miracles, the weird insights into people's lives, that the weird stuff that happens there. I mean, He is there and He is present, and that's part of our job is to make sure that God feels invited. So we'd
One
love to
of
have
the
you. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was gonna say one real quick thing. There's a lot of people who attend. the Burning Man festival, even the festival and that kind of thing. Who like to thank the universe for stuff. And to me, I think when people thank the universe for things, it's literally doing everything they possibly can to avoid thanking God.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. It's just the
they're
biggest thing they can think while still excluding God.
exactly, and I've
Right.
had some issues with that and people doing that. I just have a conversation with them when they mention it, and these I would love to re-listen to all the research episodes and then um, join the team. That's just something I can try to reach out to Carl and for another plan for 2026 or something like that. There's no way.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'll talk with Carl about that too. Because, yeah, we need to actually put some sort of thing together to, make it organized and make sure people, because that's one of the things too, is I kind of fly by the seat of my pants, but Carl has it all
Yeah,
planned out way in advance. And especially for a first timer, like a Burning Man first timer, they really need a lot of support, not just at Burning Man, but even before and after,
I would, just want to have some of those conversations beforehand as well,
Right.
to mentally prepare myself and spiritually prepare myself again. Uh, I know I've never been in a better place than right now to attend. Being been sober for over a year now and just incredibly clear minded, closer to God than I've been in a really long time, and I look forward to assisting one day.
Dude, that's great. I look forward to it, man. Yeah, I can't wait to be able to. I mean, we're moving out of this just internet community thing, and along with everything else, I think getting some Canarians around on the team, making it happen, that's in our future. And you'll get the call, buddy. You'll be right
I
there. You'll
appreciate
get.
it.
You betcha. Well, it's great to talk to you, man. Thanks for calling
Yeah,
in. Thanks
it's
for
been a while.
everything you've added to the conversation.
Thank you, sir. God bless, and I know I won't probably necessarily talk to you before you go. So keep on that armor, and I have no doubt in my mind you'll come back and you'll feel accomplished for what you've done and the conversations you've had, and the research project will benefit, and other folks will benefit as well from your being there.
Ah, amen, man. Thank you so much, buddy. You take it easy.
You as well.
God bless. That's fun. See, I knew we had some Canarians who had been out there before. Let's do this. We got one more caller waiting in the waiting room. Let's do that. We're going to bring him on. And then we'll talk about a couple more things, and then we'll be out of here. Thank you very much, Grillin, for that. Because yes, yeah. I'll say this. Luckily, recently, in recent years, the pushback about going to Burning Man has been a lot less. Not non-existent, been a lot less. But now that we're back on Face Like the Sun, I'm kind of expecting a little bit more pushback. But I hope to give a pretty good description and perhaps even inspiration to people about what we have been doing out there, what will happen out there, perhaps even something they can get involved in, but also look forward to the research when it comes back, because it's really been a blessing in the past. And I'm sure there's some people out there who won't like it no matter what until they get to listen to some of the research that comes out of it. I think they'll understand there. But yes, to have someone come in and second the what I'm laying down is very helpful, just so people don't think I'm just making it all up. All right, got one more caller. It's the one, the only. It's Sir Psalm 40. What's up, buddy? You're on the air.
Hey Baz, how you doing?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I've been in and out kind of with the show today, so not sure what has or hasn't been talked about. But I was curious, with all the time you spent out at Black Rock City, you'd have to imagine that there's got to be so many like generational curses out there, so much like trauma and a lot of spiritual baggage, I guess could be a good
Uh-huh.
word. I'm
Yeah.
curious if you've ever like seen anything supernatural, because I've heard snippets of supernatural, I guess, encounters that you've had with people, like things orchestrated by God falling together in certain ways. But have you ever seen like an entity or demonic face syndrome type things?
Yeah, right, right. Yeah, really good question. So this to answer this question, it kind of correlates with my long-standing history, which I've told before. I've mentioned before. I've told the stories where I've had lots and lots and lots in the history of Basel of experiences with demonic entities, with ghosts, with all sorts of supernatural experiences, sleep paralysis, and astral projection, and this and this and that and that. Waking up with shadow, the shadow beings, the electricity, just the whole thing. So I'm very in my life have had endless types of these experiences. I've told the stories before, and I'm happy to tell them again whenever somebody needs me to. But as far as direct demonic interaction, I do not. Now, let me say this in case anybody needs the history. For my entire life, I had interacted or been interacted with by supernatural beings of all kinds on a fairly regular basis. Then, when I was 23 years old, a shadow being came into my room, stood at the foot of my bed. I levitated up into the air. I woke up, opened my eyes. My face was 2 inches away from the ceiling, uh, and then instantly felt myself drop, bounce onto the bed. It was the most intense sort of physical interaction I had had with some sort of supernatural being. And after that, I just said, "No, I'm done. I'm done with this. I am done seeing you guys. I am done interacting with you guys. I am done with you touching me. I am done with you messing with me. In Jesus' name, I'm just done. I'm not going to do it anymore." And I've never interacted directly with a being since. And that was when I was 23 years old. And I say that as a praise report, as someone who had had all
Yeah.
sorts of ongoing experiences, and to a degree, sort of appreciated them a little bit. I mean, calling out the name of Jesus always worked. I really felt and expressed and acted in the power that Christ gives us, um, and was very successful every time something weird like that happened. But I just had enough at this point and said, no more. In the name of Jesus, I'm just not doing it anymore. So when I say I have not had personal interaction with entities out there, I consider it a continuation of that promise that God and I made back when I was 23.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
I
powerful.
I have seen others oppressed. I have seen others obviously in battles. I've stepped in and participated in one or two in as a sort of agent to bring the name of Jesus and help someone in a situation like this. A couple of maybe once have I done it directly. Often I will be in sort of a support role, or I'll say more often, where I'll be praying and interceding, but not necessarily have my hands on someone. Um, and other than those sort of direct, sort of next level of experiences, you can really feel the spiritual atmosphere in different places. You can feel the presence in different areas. And it's very interesting because, like I said, you go to Burning Man, you kind of think that the whole thing's debaucherous and the whole thing's a big sin fest and the whole thing is this. And it's really not like that. Like, you can go to lectures. You can basically spend the whole time going to school if you want. You really have to, and the place is huge. You know, it's something like 30 square miles. Not that big, but it's like 5 square miles. It's a huge place. And each camp, each place you go, I mean, it's almost like there are each their own little domain, their own little geographical domain. I'm sure that there is or are primary principalities over Black Rock Desert as a geography. But walking around Black Rock City, each tent, each situation, each event, each piece of art, each nothing, each area just out in the middle of the desert with nothing around, kind of has its own atmosphere to it. And some camps you walk into, deep, dark, troublesome, demonic presence. You can feel it. Oftentimes just triggers an instant instant prayer session for me. I know where to be and where not to be. Like I said before, I really feel the strong hand of the Lord guide me pretty much in and out of every single place that I go there. And like I said, I'm pretty confident in my ability to know where I should and shouldn't be. And I consider myself fairly, pretty spiritually sensitive in those types of ways. Thank God, glory to God on that case. And so the spiritual sensitivity there is significantly heightened, which I think a lot of people feel that. I don't think that's just for me either. I think because of its sort of weird ritualistic, thing, because of the supernatural presences, because of the principalities, because of the sort of charged atmosphere from the rituals and the totems and the things like that. I think for the most part, everybody is a bit more spiritually sensitive there, which is also why I think both things. It's why I think a lot of people do a lot of drugs there and do drink a lot in order to dampen the spiritual sensitivity that they might have, and they're trying to forget it and kind of numb it out. And because it's really hard to be in certain places out there. And so sometimes when I'm in a place and I'm like, nope, this is not for me, I look around and there might be a bunch of people there, and I'm like, more than likely these people have numbed themselves with something to a degree that their sort of spiritual sensitivity is decreased to let them continue being in this place. And the other side of that is true too. A lot of people are totally sober. I would say more people are totally sober at Burning Man the whole time, because not out of any, requirement or whatever. They're in AA or, they're sober outside of Burning Man. A lot of people stay sober precisely to kind of what Krillin confirmed for us here, because it's already sort of so spiritually engaging that even a sort of someone who is not very spiritually sensitive, when they come into Burning Man, the knobs are cranked up so high that they don't need, drugs or alcohol to really feel some sort of transformative connection with the spirit realm. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, it does, and then some. That was really good. You're good at just running off the cuff like that with relevant, and staying relevant. But
Thanks.
I think when I think of like kind of, it's hard for me to put words to my thoughts, but like that spiritual climate kind of that you were talking about, that you can feel in different camps. Um, I kind of think of that like even when we see in the Bible talking about the spirit of something, you know, I think of it a lot like school spirit. I think that's an easy way to like
Oh,
compare it, you know, like or like if you walk into like this football stadium or something, there is a certain, you know, climate there, there's a certain emotion and, you know, passion of pride for a certain thing,
yeah, yeah, interesting.
intentions, you know, and you know that many people coming together, being on that same, you know, brainwave has to have, you know, physical changes to the atmosphere. And I
Totally.
think that that's also why the title, The Camp of the Unknown God, really is so perfect because that whole festival really does remind me of that scene in Acts where like there's all these different, you know, gods all over the place. You know, these people do this over here and they do that over there. And there's also this little camp of an unknown God. So I
Yep.
think the whole Burning Man thing just really reflects that scene in Acts.
Totally. That's a real, I mean, that's a, yeah, a brilliant point to bring up. And it's obviously the inspiration behind Carl's naming the Camp of the Unknown God, but it really is sort of literally exactly how that is. And much like how I'm seeing some conversations in the comments section and some conversations that I've referred to earlier, even those who say, well, I was a Christian and I don't believe because that's silly and God is mean and it's sad and everybody is bummed out, you know, etc. Whatever story they have about God, um, the unknown God aspect of Acts 17, I believe, or was it Acts 17? I forget. Um, the the unknown God story from Acts, that the amongst the garden of idols and other gods in this inclusive metropolitan ancient metropolis, they had a statue to every god, and just in case that there was one that they did not know the story of or the one that they did not make an idol to, they put the idol of the unknown god, an altar to this unknown god. And when people come to me and they say, "Oh, I don't like God. I don't like Christianity. It's mean and sad and boring," and I go, "Oh, well, it's time for you to actually encounter the unknown God, because that God that you're talking about, I don't know that God either. That God that you're saying you don't like, who throws lightning bolts and, you know, whatever story they just tell me, they think they're talking about God, but they're really just telling a story of a God that I don't believe in either. Um, that placeholder of the unknown God, that word unknown there being very important. Like, you think you know about God, you think you know the God that I'm going to talk about, but you don't. So here is this unknown God. Just drop your assumptions, drop your old stories. Let's talk about this thing that you obviously don't know about. And it's a much better opportunity to actually get real with somebody and to get past those sort of filters, those wounds, those triggers, those the damage that's been done to them by people. I mean, that's the thing, really. These people who are so mad at Christianity or whatever, it's really Christians that they don't like. It's their mom, it's their dad, it's, you know, somebody, some mean Christian online or something. That's the story they're telling. And so to come from this biblical perspective of, well, in this garden of idols, in this garden of all gods, this unknown one that you don't know, let me tell you about this one, because that's the one that I'm talking about, is a really powerful experience and is very fruitful, has an incredibly fruitful perspective to come from, at least in our experience.
Yeah, you know, one of the first times I ever called in, I don't know why it got brought up, but we were talking about revival, and I think that, you know, right now, like the time in history that we're at, like, of course, there's a lot of spirituality is cool again and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
there's also the whole pandemic we just went through. A lot of people are traumatized, you know, beyond just the curiosity of seeking spirituality. Some people that may not have had trauma before 2020, like, may have it now. And some of it could even be church hurt because of everything the churches had to go through in that time. So it does seem like the bad things that have happened over the last 5 years have actually really um, fertilized, the fields for, you know, good crops to come in.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And yeah, we've seen that sort of reflected in culture broadly, and I think I'm actually really excited to see how we see that sort of manifest at Burning Man this year. I think it's going to be I think it's going to be amazing.
One more quick thing. Has Gons ever considered it? That conversation has had to come up, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I've tried. I mean, Gantz he's pretty practical most of the time. And yeah, it's just not quite practical with him and the family and the kids and stuff like that. I know he'd want to. He has said that he wants to, but and he
The old
doesn't.
ball and chain.
Yeah, I think whether I mean he's got a point. I'm not going to argue with him, but it's a pretty good
Yeah.
excuse to not have to come out. 7 days is a long time. Not that he has to
Well,
stay for all 7 days, but but one day, who knows? Maybe when the kids are older or something shapes up around there.
I guess that was really it that I had to say.
I think what we do is we bring Burning Man to Gons. We get a bunch of Canarians
Hmm.
together and we dress up in funny outfits and we just go to Gonza's house and just kind of
Yeah.
jump around, light stuff on fire.
Well,
I think that'd be fine.
the Canary convention has been, flirted with for quite a while now. So maybe that is what we're gonna have to do. We're just gonna have to go to Bakersfield or wherever. Just go to his
Yeah.
backyard and do it there.
Well, Canary Cry Con at Gonza's house. burning Canary Cry Burning Con at Gonza's house. That's funny. All right, buddy. Thanks so much for calling in, man. Again, great questions. Always a pleasure talking to you. And God bless.
Yeah, man. God bless you too. God bless all you Canarians. Hope you all have a peaceful night.
Take it easy.
Bye.
All right. Well, there you go, folks. That was fun. What a fruitful conversation this is. I wonder if I was in a VR headset, if it would be as fruitful. That's the question. Is the VR headset adding or subtracting from what we're doing here? I cannot tell. Cannot tell. We're going to keep praying about it. The good news is, however, folks, that I was able to go ahead and put a produce the Burning Man research button over there at canarycry.support. Also at burningmanresearch.com. There's a produce the Burning Man research button there. The buttons exist. I am going to I'll pop this link into the chat here just in case anybody out there is feeling called to support this year's trip. There's a little note section there. You can put a note. And anything that comes through that button will go directly to the Burning Man Research Project. We are not using any general funds for the Burning Man Research Project because we don't want anybody getting involved with that who doesn't want to be involved. But if it's something that you feel is worth something, if you get value from it, if you feel that the Lord has his hand on the trip and you want to be involved, anyway, with your time, your talent, your treasure, you can go ahead, click on that button right there at canarycry.support or burningmanresearch.com. Here. Oh, and I suppose I'll put the direct link. I'll have Gons put the direct link for the button in the description for those, I don't know, on the podcast player. I mean, I guess people listening to podcasts can also go to the website. But either way, you get the point. You can go check it out, get involved. Usually we shoot for about a budget of $2,000. The ticket has already been donated to me. So, you know, if we could, about $1,500 is kind of what we would shoot for. Just in case anybody wants or needs that information, I can give updates to that goal as we go. So, all right, everybody, you did it. You did it. I did it. We did it together. Now we're going to listen to Feeding the Ducks here for a second. The world's most important stock-free, royalty-free stock music. A masterpiece that Shirley, the producer of which, had no idea just how life-changing, world-changing even, this little jam would be. It's called Feeding the Ducks, and sometimes you just got to stand around a pond and throw some old bread. Let the ducks do their thing, bob around, those little feet, cruising around. Thanks to everybody who joined the Canary Cry text message alert system. If you haven't done it, do it now. Text the word Canary to 877-740-3226. Just the word Canary. We'll send you a little text when we go live. And you can text us back at this number. 406 says, Ben L. sending much love, Baz. Wish I could tune in live, but cars need fixing. Still working on Gonza's PC. But let me know if you need parts for yours too. Oh, let's talk about computer parts. 678 says, being a pioneer of the rave scene in Southeast and a DJ for my life, burners just seem to be even further out. I always ask God why I had the opportunities I did in such dark places, and I always heard because you're light. I was never sure if I was enough of a light to go to Burning Man. Forgive the always unproofread dictations on the go. Always juggling. Well, thank you very much, 678. You are bright as you can be. Here's Feeding the Ducks. It's back on. There we go. See, Basil's a DJ too. Thank you very much, 678. God bless you. Let's see here. Krillin says, this is Krillin. Love you, Baz. Great show. Thank you very much, Krillin. Krillin says, trying for a Colorado meetup. Any interest? Colorado meetup, folks. Hey, while you're at it, you got your phone out, text the word meetups, MEETUPS, one word, don't forget the S, meetups, to 877-740-3226. That puts you on the meetup alert system. Don't worry, totally different list, same number, where I will send out alerts that there are meetups, both broadly in the nation and the world, but also specifically in your area. So if you do that, and you're in Colorado, and you want a meetup in Colorado, text meetups to 877-740-3226 and send me a little note. It says, hey, I want a Colorado meetup. We can make it work. Okay. Other than that, folks, God bless. We'll be back on Monday with more Canary Cry News Talk. You're gonna love it. So make sure to tune in then. But until then, think outside the cage.